Now, as you know, Iceland is a hard and rocky country, and so it was. 300 years ago, or perhaps more, they ran out of room to bury the long dead. Well, the priests, they did not mind much. They decided that the old bones of pagan times could be dug up and put in pits or burned. And so it was. One autumn afternoon, 3 men went down to the churchyard. There was Stefan, who was in charge. There was little Grim, the ugly man. And there was young Olaf, who was little more than a boy, with hardly a beard on his name. And the 3 of them set to work. Come forenoon, Olaf was down the bottom of the hole, while the others were offering very helpful advice. When he looked up and said, "Hang on, I got a problem, I got a root here." And Grim said, "Well, just dig round it then, it's just a root." And Olaf worked for 10 minutes, but then he looked up and said, "No, I think it's a bone, but I can't get it out." And Grim jumped down and said, "Well, I'll help." And he reached down to start to try to move out the bone, but he couldn't move it. And so the pair of them dug and pulled and dug and pulled, and then Stefan said, "Well, it's obvious really, if you want to do a job, you've got to do it yourself." And he jumped down to try and help. And the 3 of them struggled and struggled and struggled for fully 20 minutes before at last they pulled and pulled and pulled it out. And out came a bone. But such a thigh bone, in fact. But such a thigh bone as neither of them none of them had ever seen before. For it was huge. And Olaf held it up and said, "Look at that, wouldn't you believe it?" And he threw it up in the air and caught it. And threw it up in the air again and caught it. And Grim said, "Watch out, watch it. That is a thigh bone, surely of my great relative, Egil Skallagrimsson, for I am a man admirer too." And his eyes shone as he drew his brow hard over them. And Olaf said, "Oh, well, who'd have thought that? A bone at Egil Skallagrimsson?" And he chuckled, and he threw it in the air again and said, "Just think, I have in my hand Egil Skallagrimsson, who had, when he lived, all the world and heirs." But Stefan said, "Get on with your work." And so they got on with their work. It was lunchtime, and Olaf was sitting, munching, still looking at that bone, for it seemed to fascinate him. And then when he found himself saying, "You know what I wish? You know that custom we all have? That on our wedding day, all our relatives come round, our friends and our in-laws, and on the second day we have a massive, great big wrestling match. Well, I wish that Egil Skallagrimsson would come to my wedding and would wrestle with me and my brothers, and I bet you we'd show him a move or two." But Grim, when he heard that, said, "You better watch out now. My forefather, Egil Skallagrimsson, was a man cunning in wisdom, not someone whose name you should take in vain." But Olaf just chuckled, and he threw the bone up in the air and caught it again 3 times. Well, if truth be said, Olaf had made the boast or request in light heart, for, as I said, he had no beard. He had not even and never had a girlfriend, let alone a fiancée. Well, the years passed. Olaf grew up. His beard grew hard, his muscles harder. He became quite the most handsome man in his valley, and so it was no surprise when he became engaged to be married. What was more surprise was to the girl he was engaged to, Gudrun by name, who did not live in his valley or the next one, but the one after. She was a bit older than him, and famous for being somewhat cunning. It was the night after their engagement had been announced. Olaf had ridden home and gone to sleep, and he'd gone to sleep happy. But in the middle of the night he had a dream, and in that dream he saw a dark, dark plain, and across the other side of the plain were high red mountains, and coming stalking over the plain in the twilight was a great figure. And the figure had black brows and was bald and looked more like a cliff troll than a man. In Olaf's dream the figure came and stood until it overtowered him and said, "Olaf, Olaf, I must say how much I am looking forward to coming to your wedding, my friend. Then the figure would laugh horribly, and Olaf, oh, you believe, would start out of his sleep. For a week he had the same dream, until I could bear it no longer. I rode over the hills and over the hills again, and came down over the valley where Gudrun was. And there she was, working away, and I went up to her and said, I noticed you're a bit pale. Oh, Gudrun, I've had a horrid dream. And she said to me,
Have you now, Olaf? I too have been troubled by terrible dreams, but tell me yours first.
well, it was like this. So I told her the dream. And then Gudrun, she said,
Oh, Olaf, my dream has been very similar to that. Who have you been inviting to
no,
our
it
wedding?
might have been you. If anybody has been inviting the wrong people.
Olaf, he said he was looking forward to meeting me. Who have you invited to our wedding that you should not?
I've invited your relatives.
Don't be foolish,
I've
Olaf.
invited my brother. Can we invite him? I don't mind doing that.
Don't be facetious. Anyone or anything.
And all of a sudden, the memory of the churchyard flooded in front of Gudrun's mind. Sorry, Olaf's mind. And he told Gudrun all about it, and she gave him a long, hard look and said,
Olaf, how could you have been so foolish? Leave this to me. I must go and see the wise woman at the northern end of Iceland and see what she has to say. Get her advice.
Olaf went home, while Gudrun, she got what food and provisions she could, and went north, over mountain, across glacier and snowfields, until she came to the very northernmost crag of Iceland. And there she met the wise woman of her folk. And whether she made a bargain with her, or whether the wise woman, out of the kindness of her heart, gave her gifts, no stories tell. But she came back with 4 things.
A goblet filled with some black earth. A tiny, curious, carved silver lock, and a key to go with it. And a pouch, they say, of Byzantine silver.
And much good advice. She came back to Olaf's farm, and came before him and said,
I know what we must do. We must build another hall.
Another one?
Yes, another.
I've already built one.
It does not have to be quite like this, but it must be decorated for a wedding. It can be bare apart from that, but it must be decorated. For it is not right that the dead be entertained with the living.
So what will happen then? Can we stop him coming?
No, we cannot. Edgar will come here. He will come to our hall, and he will expect to be entertained. I will greet him, but tell him that as it is my bridal day, that he must do my bidding, and therefore for him to be entertained in the other hall, which we have prepared specially for him and any guests he chooses to bring, and you must take him there.
What, I just lead him in, do I?
No, on no account. You must take him from this hall to the hall that we have prepared, but you must not enter in it.
But how will I do that?
Well,
You don't want me going first.
Olaf, I cannot think of everything. It is to your wit to determine.
And so they did what Gudrun said. They built another hall, and in it Gudrun hung great tapestries depicting Egil's life and times. And on the table she put the goblet with its dark substance, and at the door she had set the silver lock and key. While Olaf looked on, anxious. The days passed quickly to their wedding day,